Welcome to JSOU's Meet the Fellows. I am Major Jacqueline Mott, and today I'm speaking with a JSOU non-resident fellow, Miss Elizabeth Keys. Elizabeth, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. So let's dive right in. What is your education and work background?
So my education background is a bit varied. I started off, my first and only love for the most part, intellectually at least, has been physics. And so my bachelor's degree is in physics. And then knowing what physics does and knowing how it works, being an experimentalist, I figured it was probably a good idea to learn some more practical methods. And so my master's degree is in mechanical engineering, where I focused on material science. And then for my PhD, I now find myself sort of pursuing a PhD in electrical engineering, but mostly it's on the applied physics, electrical engineering end.
Well, you certainly have a very interesting career so far. I'm very
So
excited
far.
to hear more. So now, with that introduction into it, what motivated you into physics, science, engineering?
So I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. Anything from the original series up through most of Voyager and all that kind of stuff, just super into it. Loved that they had some through the technobabble, you know, all the silly comments and the silly technologies that they've invented. There are some really interesting ideas. And I was really interested and sort of captivated by the idea that you have these very, complicated high-end physics phenomena that they're throwing around in everyday speak. It's applied technology, it's technology that they use every day and everyone uses it. And so that's what motivated me. If I had my ideal career, I would essentially be a Starfleet engineer. So B'Elanna or, Scotty, anything like that, taking crazy theoretical physics ideas and putting them into things that not just academia uses, not just the national labs use, but something that everyone uses every day.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And so kind of diving into that, what projects have you been involved in or are interested in for the future research?
So the stuff that I've been working on, again, extremely varied. I jack of all trades kind of idea. One of the first projects I was ever involved in was a cosmology project, actually. And so the project generally revolved around, if you do some naive calculations, there's a lot more interstellar dust than we have stars. So the ecosystem is there to support a lot more stars and planets than we actually have. And there's this sort of lingering question on why don't we have more star systems? Why don't we have more planets? And so one of a balloon-borne telescope that I was working with sought to answer that question. And so my little tiny part of it was that I built a sun sensor to sort of determine the attitude of the payload. So that was a fun first project. And then for my bachelor's degree, I actually worked in ballistics. So I worked with firearms and tried to determine the stopping power, probably not gonna, not a lot of people like that word, but the stopping power of certain projectiles and handguns. I studied specifically the 357 and compared it to the 9mm. And then working the other end of the ballistic system, I actually worked on body armor and energy transfer of that projectile system for my master's degree. And so a lot of my work was in careful energy accounting, trying to figure out where that energy is going and either maximize the energy at target or conversely, minimizing the impact of energy at target. So essentially protecting the person behind the body armor. I've also worked on anything from a small side home project of Tesla's earthquake machine, looking at natural frequencies and oscillations and sort of adding history in there a little bit. But also for my most recently, I am a very grateful recipient of the DoD SMART Scholarship. And that stands for, of course, DoD loves its acronyms. That is the Science, Mathematics, Research for Transformation Scholarship. And so that allowed me in my PhD to sort of branch out away from sort of what my lab is doing and have some fun with enhanced underwater communications, specifically in the optical regime. So that's been some fun stuff. Looking forward to doing more of that.
It sounds like it's been very fun. So I guess what brought you then to JSOU? What tied that in?
That's a fair question. I'm sitting here and all of my non-resident fellows and all you wonderful people I'm sitting with policy people and, international studies and, all kinds of amazing things. And I'm like the engineer going, hey, but ever since my undergrad, I was struck by a story that I heard where the conflict in the Middle East, the most recent conflict in the Middle East had just started. And there was a story that had come out that there was a group of soldiers, and they were in a conflict. They had actually a sort of a range device, whatever it was, to paint a target and call in an airstrike. They were not doing so hot. And during that process, they had actually, the battery died in their device. And it was fine. You just change out the batteries, repaint the target. It's all great. Unfortunately, the device actually needed to be recalibrated. And what was very frustrating to hear was that because they were under fire, because it was such a stressful situation, the recalibration wasn't done, and they wound up calling in the strike on their own position. And to my knowledge, 2 American soldiers died in that incident, along with a couple of Iraqi soldiers as well. And it was very frustrating to me because I knew that with my then comparatively limited knowledge, that I could actually have fixed that problem with a watch battery, the same way that you would save CMOS settings in a desktop computer. And I was kind of horrified. And so I started talking to other service members who I knew were at my school who had recently come back. And I started seeing this trend of there's technology that we think is going to be good, that we think is going to be advantageous, and then falls to the wayside, gets left in the bottom of a footlocker. And so when I saw JSOU's call, I saw that as an opportunity to sort of take my unique position with an interest in military history, military doctrine, wanting to serve, wanting to help, and be able to sort of pick into where the hiccup is. Why is it that certain technologies are helpful, certain technologies are not advantageous? Where does that come from an ideation perspective? The calls, is it from the calls, is it from academia, where that happens? And so rather than just trying to myself always thoughtfully design technology so that way, anyone can do it, we don't have those kinds of mistakes that I mentioned. I saw an opportunity to take a larger, more active role in hopefully determining and finding out exactly where those problems arise.
Well, that is absolutely necessary. So thank you for giving that example. And now I guess I want to just see, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, if all goes well, in Alpha Centauri partying on a space yacht, but probably not, just because, Starfleet engineer makes sense. But in the short term, my scholarship is scholarship for service. So I'm very happy to have a position waiting for me in S&T when I get out, when I actually obtain my PhD, and I'll be working in the interim, for there. But also my husband and I have started this. It's a company sort of think tank, tech developer, where we really, really focus on trying to develop, again, thoughtfully develop technology that is specifically aimed for the warfighter, that bridges gaps that we know that they have, and want to sort of make an example of a different method of developing things, not necessarily from the top down, not necessarily from the bottom up, but there's got to be something in the middle that we can meet. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on. So ideally a job there, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, I absolutely love that. I thank you so much, Elizabeth. It has been a pleasure speaking with you, getting to know a little bit about your background, where you want to go, and the things that you're hoping to do. So I'm looking forward to everything that your research efforts are going forward with in JSOU. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you very much.